for joining us. Thank you, Anil Prabhu and Smita Mataji for joining us. I do see Anuradha Mataji and Anu online. And thank you, Anand Busari Prabhu and your family for joining us. Ishika, thank you and your family for joining us. It's also good to see Jeet Mitra. Sorry, that's his initiated name now. It's good to see Jeet Mitra Prabhu online. Thank you, Mamina Mataji. It's an inspiration to always see you active in all our online programs. So I'm inspired. Thank you for being part of our program. And Xavier, I have not forgotten you this time. I caught you. So thank you for being part of our program all the way from North Carolina. So I thank all of you for joining us, and we should be seeing more devotees joining us as time goes on. I would like to welcome our special guest, Her Grace Mother Urmila Devi Dasi. We can write a book about her, actually. She's really an amazing devotee. She's a very senior disciple of Srila Prabhupada. My family and I should say my husband and I had the good fortune of meeting her in the mid-90s in Alachua during the North American Education Conference. And has lots of education background. She first taught in Detroit, Mother, I think, if I'm not mistaken, right, Mother Urmila? I remember that story. And then she started the school in North Carolina for many years. In fact, her daughter is also a teacher, and she trained her daughter, Champakalata, to also be a teacher. She is also a Bharatanatyam dance teacher, her daughter. And Mother Urmila has 3 married children, 14 grandchildren, and 2 great grandsons, and she still looks like she's in her youthful age. Never age. And Mother Urmila has a lot of years in running a school, in school management, and in administration. She's currently very active in the Shastrik Advisory Council for the GBC worldwide. She has taught, she is also the former professor of sociology at the Bhaktivedanta College. Mother is one of our, many mothers of Srila Prabhupada disciples who really is an epitome for women to be empowered, to be able to serve in Srila Prabhupada's mission. And we are very honored. And we are very blessed to have Mother Urmila, and she's going to be giving us a wonderful lecture. And we do ask devotees to please mute yourself so that there's no background interference when she's giving the lecture. And do write down your questions on a little pad, a little paper, so that we can ask Mother Urmila any questions we have at the end of the class. Mother Urmila, it's all yours. And again, thank you so much. We are so honored to have you. Bless us with your mercy and blessings. Hare Krishna, Mother.
Hare Krishna. What time is the class supposed to end along with questions?
It can go on for an hour, including questions. So you have till 6:20, Mother.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava
Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya
Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari.
Jaya
Gopi Jana Vallabha
Girivaradari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari.
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari.
Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana.
Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana.
Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana.
Yashodanandana Jana
Yamuna Tira Vanachari
Yamuna Tira Vanachari
Yamuna Tira Vanachari
Jamuna Tira Vanachari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya
Radha Madhava Kunjabihari
Gopi Janabalaba Girivaradari
Jaya Gopi
Gopi Janabala
Girivaradari
Giridhari
Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana
Yashodanandana
Yashodanandana
Rajadana
Rajadana
Ranjana
Munatira Vanachari
Jamuna
Yamunati
Tira
Vanachari.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
So it is May 24th, 2020, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, class over Zoom, and we're going to be looking at how we're going to get free of our anarthas.
Very well.
Yes. In my sense, we're not really interested in getting rid of anarthas. What we're interested in is getting our arthas. Somebody needs to be muted. We're interested in having our real goals of life. We're interested in getting the real benefit of life. And the false things tend to fall away naturally when one has the real thing. Yes?
Yes.
Is my video on here?
No, mother, we can't see your
So I know
your picture. I think you turned the video on your side off, I'm thinking.
No, I never did. And all I see is your video.
Oh, Krishna.
Okay. There we go.
I just
There
sent
you
a
are.
request to
Haribol.
start the video.
There we go. Yes, I was here
Yes.
before and somehow I disappeared. Okay. So in one sense, we're not really interested just in getting rid of anarthas. We're interested in reestablishing a relationship, a personal relationship with the personality of Godhead. And that relationship is eternal. It's already there. Nobody can take it away. Nobody can create it. It's always there. So what is this anarthas? Anarthas means something unwanted, something that's damaging, that I have put between myself and my relationship with Krishna. And so I want to lose this anartha, not so much to lose the anartha, but so there's no block in the relationship. Now, in many spiritual, somebody needs to mute. In many spiritual paths, the main emphasis is on removing anarthas. If the goal of the spiritual path is the person's own salvation, liberation, enlightenment, and so forth, oneness, even personal liberation, if people are thinking in terms like that, of going to Vaikuntha for their personal liberation, the reason that they want to remove their anarthas or become free from identifying with their anarthas would be so that they can be liberated. It would be something like if we're working outside on a very hot day in the garden and we're getting full of soil, or maybe we're getting full of mud. If watering the plants. You know, we're getting on our knees in the garden and our clothes are muddy. The mud is going through the clothes to our knees. Our shoes are muddy. Maybe we wiped our hair and our hair is muddy. And then we're all sweaty. You know, the sweat is pouring down our back. And we want to get clean because we feel yucky. We feel, blah, you know, we stink and we're all sticky. So we're thinking, you know, maybe our fingernails have dirt under them. So we're scrubbing. Why? Because we want to feel good. Because feeling dirty is an uncomfortable feeling. You'll see this phenomena often even in very young children. And it's interesting because very young children usually like to play with water. Right. As soon as a child can walk, if they see a puddle, you know, they want to splash in the water. They like to play with mud, but it's very common for young children to come to their parents if they have dirt on their hands and, yeah, help me, you know, clean me up. Or, you know, they've splashed in the water puddle and then they say, my clothes are wet. So most spiritualists are interested in cleansing their heart, freeing themselves from anarthas, because those anarthas are very uncomfortable. And I'd say even materialistic people, many materialistic people want to, perhaps most even, want to be free of bad habits. They want to be free of things that make them not like themselves. You know, there's, again, I don't know if there's been a study, but I would say that many just plain old materialistic people, people who have no interest in religion or spirituality, would say that they'd like to be a better person. Why? So they would like themselves more, so they'd feel comfortable with themselves. So this desire to get rid of things that we're holding on to that are causing us difficulty is pretty universal, but it's also very selfish. You know, it's also very selfish. Just like, why do people want to lose excess weight? It's a similar kind of thing. You know, why don't we want to be overweight? It's uncomfortable. You know, any of us who've ever weighed more than our ideal weight, carrying that weight around is literally physically uncomfortable. And it's also unattractive. So we want to lose the weight so we can be comfortable and attractive. So we in Bhakti Yoga have a different perspective. Now, in the beginning of Bhakti Yoga, we may indeed be interested in anartha nivritti because we are tired of suffering. You know, we've come to understand that the material world is a place of suffering. We've come to understand that the suffering we're going through is due to our own material desires, is due to our own material attachments, to our false ego. And so we get really excited and we say, wow, if I could get rid of my false ego and my material desires and my material attachments, then I would be happy. You know, I mean, we talked about getting clean when you're working out in the dirt. It's also a feeling we have, say, if we're wearing something uncomfortable. Let's say, you know, women are wearing high-heeled, pointy-toed shoes at work, you know, or they're wearing clothes that squeeze them and pinch them to make them look more attractive. And so they can't wait to take off those shoes, take off that clothes. Or if we're carrying a heavy backpack, I've had that experience where I'd been going to an airport, let's say, with a very heavy backpack, and I can't wait until I can sit in a chair and just take the backpack off and put it down. So in the beginning of Bhakti Yoga, that may also be there because Krishna says that 4 pious people come to him. Those are people who want material happiness, people who want to be free of material distress, curious people, and those who are already Brahman realized. So most people are in the first 3 categories or some combination. A person may want material happiness and also be curious. A person may want to be free of material distress and also be curious. A person may want material happiness and to become free of material distress. And when we understand, at least theoretically, that our anarthas are the cause of our distress, or that freeing ourselves from these anarthas will make us happy, we want to do that. Another example would be in a home. So there's this Japanese woman, what's her name? Marie Kondo, I think her name is. And she's started this whole cleanup movement that you go through your home and you look at things, you know, does this give me joy? I don't know. If it doesn't, I get rid of it. So having only things around that bring you happiness. And people want to get rid of their excess stuff, then, you know, again, for happiness. Now, bhakti is really radically different from this approach, but it does have a parallel in our human relationships. So I'm sure that we've had an experience in our human relationships where there'll be some difficulty between us and somebody that we care about, right? There's some problem where there was a misunderstanding or miscommunication, or somebody broke trust, maybe some harsh words were spoken, maybe one person did something that the other person finds ethically unacceptable. Somehow there's a break in the relationship. There's a break in the relationship. And again, I'm sure we all have experience of this in our own life, that there's some person that we like the relationship, we assume they like the relationship, and something goes wrong, right? Something goes wrong. Either it was their fault, or maybe it was my fault, or maybe it was a combination of fault, but something's wrong, and maybe there's a total break. We're not speaking to each other. Maybe it's a partial break where you see each other, but it's gone from an intimate relationship to a very formal, stilted relationship. And I'm sure we know other people in this sort of a situation. We know people where, we know people who've gotten divorced and they hate each other, or they've gotten divorced and they are still friendly, but at a distance. We know brothers and sisters who've had difficulty, don't talk to each other, parents and children, etc., or friends and friends, or disciples and gurus. We all know of people who have these partial or total shifts, splits, and schisms in their relationships. Now, let's say that we've been in this situation and we've also restored a relationship. Again, I'm assuming that all or most of us have had this situation where there's been some split in a relationship and it's been healed. And I'm sure we all know of people in this situation where there was some split in a relationship and it was healed. Somebody went and had an affair and they were able to resolve it and rectify it and heal the relationship. Or there was some misunderstanding. I mean, we all have stories like this that we could tell about ourselves and about other people that we know. Now, when a relationship is restored, what has to be done in some form or another is one has to identify and remove whatever damaged the relationship, whatever came between the people in the relationship. And sometimes it's a mutual thing, sometimes it's on one side. In our relationship with Krishna, we may not accept this emotionally, but we are accepting philosophically, theologically, that the break is entirely and 100% our fault and our responsibility. Again, on an emotional level, we may not really accept that. There may be some level at which we blame God for our separation. We say, if only Krishna would be more visible to me, more palatable to me, somehow more perceivable by me. if he would make more of an overture, then we'd have a relationship. But at least from our acharyas and the scriptures, we are told that the problem is entirely within us, and it doesn't rest in any iota of an iota of an iota in Krishna. And we're also told that the problem in us stems from some sort of deep envy or competitive nature with Krishna. Some, as Bhaktivinoda calls it, a weakness of heart, a desire to be the Lord of nature. And from that competitive, envious root comes all of the difficulties, the lust, anger, greed, right? Trividam, narakashedam, dwaram, nasanam, atmana, kamakrotas, tatalobas, tasmadetad, twayam, twajet, where Krishna says, you know, I've described all these demoniac qualities, but you really have to be careful of lust, anger, and greed. But any of the demoniac qualities, they've all sprung from this weakness of heart of I want to be the Lord of nature. I want to be the center. I want to be the enjoyer. I want to be an independent enjoyer from God. And there's many ways we could explain it. And the mood of the bhakti yogi, at least in a mature stage, is that my motive for getting rid of my anarthas is because I want to restore the relationship with Krishna, not because I want to feel clean and happy and pure, not because I want to be liberated, not because if I get rid of my anarthas, I'll be a better material enjoyer of the world. And again, initially we probably will have those selfish desires, but it should start shifting to I want to restore the relationship, and it should start shifting to I want to restore the relationship for Krishna's sake. Now, I think we can all understand this principle very clearly when someone has offended us. I believe we have a lot of difficulty understanding this principle and living by this principle when we are the offender. It's extremely hard for most people to deal with these principles when the offender is himself. But if we think about when someone else has offended us, it's actually quite easy. So if we think for a moment of anyone in our life who's ever offended us, insulted us, disappointed us, betrayed us, in some way damaged a relationship with us. So what do we want from that person? If we want to restore the relationship, if it's not the kind of situation where we'd say, I really don't care very much, I'd rather walk away. But if we want to restore the relationship, what we want is for the other person to understand what they did wrong. Let's just hypothetically say that it's 100% on the other person's fault, which is rarely the case. But let's just have a hypothetical. The other person is 100% at fault, that we have no fault here. And the other person, we want them to recognize, what did I do wrong? And we want them to recognize what did I do wrong, not in terms of the behavior exactly, but what the behavior represents in terms of our relationship. Now, a very simple example, this is a true story. There's a woman who had a very expensive purse, very expensive pocketbook, like what are those brands, like Gucci or something like that. And she had a friend visiting her. So the friend asked, may I borrow your purse? She said, sure, you can borrow my purse. So the friend borrowed the purse for the day, brought it back at the end of the day, and then went back to her home. So the owner of the purse, a few weeks later, the purse broke. When she took it in to get repaired, the shop said, this is a fake. It's not real, not the genuine article. And then the owner realized that her friend had substituted a fake for the original purse. When she contacted her friend and confronted her with this, the friend said, oh, I needed the money. If you like, I can give you $500. The thing was worth like $2,000. So it wasn't the admission of the theft that the owner of the purse wanted from her friend, assuming your ex-friend. What she wanted the friend to understand was there was a betrayal of trust. When you let somebody stay in your house, you're assuming that they're not going to steal from you, right? When you have a guest in your house who's your friend, you don't go around locking all your valuables up in a safe. You know, you leave things around the house. So there was a betrayal of trust, and there was a violation of allowing someone to stay in your space. That was the problem. The problem was not the theft of the bag per se, but it was, again, what it represents. So we want someone who's offended us to recognize how they hurt us. Again, not just the action, not just, you know, I said I would be there at 5:30, I didn't show up until 8 without an explanation. But what did I do? You know, if I come 2.5 hours late without explanation, then I'm inconsiderate of your time. I'm thinking my needs are more important than yours. So many things. So that's what we would like the person to understand. We would like them to understand in an empathic way how we felt, what was our emotional experience, what was our thought experience, what were the indignities that we had to go through because of their actions, what was the difficulty that we had to go through, how it affected us on a practical, emotional, etc. level. So we want them to take responsibility that they were the agent of harm. You know, when Kamsa apologized to Devaki and Vasudev, he said, well, you know, it's all destiny. So we don't want the person who hurt us to say, well, you know, it was my upbringing, it was my mother, it was this, it was that. We want them to take responsibility. And then we want them to offer us some kind of assurance that there's some change. We don't want to let them back in and they're going to do it again tomorrow. So we want them to offer some assurance about what are they going to do to make sure that they'll change. And in some cases, we want them to actually offer some sort of restitution. You know, in the case of the purse, we want her to give us the money to buy a new authentic purse, for example. Sometimes restitution is not practical. And ultimately, what we would like, and I don't think we get this very often, but we really would like the person to find out what was the root of this thing. You know, what was the driving force for this thing that they did wrong. So that's what we need to do in bhakti. And we're doing it for the sake of the relationship. We're doing it out of empathy for Krishna, out of empathy for Krishna, where we have compassion for Krishna, that Krishna is disappointed and sad. We could say, I mean, he's always in bliss, so he's not sad and disappointed in a material sense. But Srila Prabhupada says that he is much more anxious, that Krishna is much more anxious for us to come home, for us to restore the relationship than we are. And if we think of God as the Supreme Father, the Supreme Parent, any of us who are parents can readily understand this. When generally, there are always exceptions, but generally when there's a break between parent and child, parent and grandchild, teacher and student, it's the parent, the grandparent, the teacher who desires that the relationship be healed much more than the child, the grandchild, or the student. And I think one reason for that is obvious to those of us who have children or students, that the parent, the teacher, etc., generally has invested much, 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 much more into the relationship than the child. I mean, if we think about, you know, the mother, she's carried the child for 9 months, she gave birth to the child, she's feeding the child from her own body, changing the child's diapers, nappies, you know, bathing the child. There's so much of an investment into that child, which the child has not returned, generally speaking, very rarely in any meaningful way. And so usually it's the parent who desires the rectification of a relationship much, 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 much more than the child. And the parent is often more affected by a breach in the relationship. So we have something similar that goes on with Krishna. He's giving us everything. Eko Bahanam Yogadadati Kaman. He's giving us everything, and he's much more invested in our happiness and our life. He's, Matas Matirganam Apohanam Chat, he's aware of what we're thinking, giving us knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. And so he's always aware of us at every moment, and we are often unaware of him. So what we're looking for in Archana Vritti is for us to understand that I've been ungrateful. Here you're loving me, you're giving to me, you're reaching out to me in so many ways, and I'm just blind to this. I'm so self-absorbed. I'm so much wanting to be the enjoyer and the center. I don't even want to see you. I don't want to know you're there. I don't want to be aware of your presence. I want to forget that you're there so that I can go on with my Maya. I want to not be grateful. And wow, that must hurt your feelings. When Lord Varaha is fighting with Hiranyaka, and Hiranyaka is insulting Lord Varaha, it says in the Bhagavatam that the Lord was pained by the abusive words of the demon, but he wanted to situate the earth on the water of devastation. So he tolerated the words of the demon until he could situate the earth properly. And Srila Prabhupada writes there in the purport that the Lord has feelings. That he's affected by, in one sense he's not affected by anyone's praise or anyone's criticism, but in another sense he has feelings, and therefore he doesn't like it when his part and parcel is insulting him. So this should be our motive for this Anarthas Vritti, that we love Krishna so much, we care about Krishna so much, we become aware of his presence in our lives, we become aware of his love in our life, and we feel ashamed. That's, wow, somebody is loving me this much, someone is caring about me this much, someone is giving so much to me. And I have been holding on to this false ego. I've been holding on to lust and anger and envy and a competitive spirit. We just feel so much shame and so much grief and so much repentance that we want to get rid of the root of Anarthas. Now, what generally happens is that we don't start out from that perspective. We start out from the selfish perspective, which is the whole problem in the first place. And we usually get rid of small Anarthas. I think of it like a tree with a big root. And we usually get rid of small twigs as kind of testing until we're ready to get rid of the big root. Now, another thing we should say before we go into the method of getting rid of Anarthas is that the method for getting rid of Anarthas is generally, it's usually simply engaging in bhakti, because we don't get rid of the Anarthas per se. But it's Krishna who removes the Anarthas. How does that work? Well, we have all of these Anarthas because of the influence of the modes of material nature. Now, the deep Anartha that we have to get rid of is the desire to be under the modes of nature, the desire to compete with Krishna, but it's our associating karna guna sangasya. It's our associating with the modes of nature that causes all these problems. And Krishna is the master, right? Daiviyesha gunamayim mama maya jarache amam eviye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. Krishna is the master of the modes of nature. And as soon as he says to material nature, hey, cool, then those problems are gone. So what we see practically in our own lives, in the lives of so many devotees, is that we start offering pure vegetarian food to Krishna. If we were taking intoxication, meat eating, we give that up. If we were gambling, having illicit sex, we give that up. We start chanting Hare Krishna, and a lot of our problems go away. Even these regulative principles, we may just lose our taste for them. Like my godbrother Ravinder Swarup says that when he started chanting, he all of a sudden lost his desire to smoke cigarettes, to smoke tobacco. And a lot of us may have that same experience, that we just start chanting, we start reading the books, we start offering our food, and we just automatically lose some of our anarthas without even realizing this. St. Thomas of the Cross, a very famous Catholic theologian, called this process the dark night of the soul, a term which is often misunderstood. People often think the dark night of the soul means some kind of extreme suffering where you doubt your spirituality or spiritual faith. But what it means is that at night, while you're sleeping, so to speak, metaphorically, that the Lord comes in and removes your problems. Now, it's something like when we have a surgical operation. You go to the doctor, you say, hey, I have this problem. And the doctor says, okay, we'll give you an anesthetic. And when you wake up from the surgery, the tumor will be gone, the hernia will be fixed, whatever. So a lot of our anarthas are gone like that. As we engage in Krishna consciousness, Krishna is like the sun, Maya is like darkness, and the darkness just sort of recedes. And a lot of our mental habits, our emotional habits, our behavioral habits, we lose interest in them. And often we're not even aware, at the time. We just, in retrospect, oh, well, I haven't had a desire to eat that, or I haven't had a desire to watch that, or it's just gone. And we're not really even, we don't even know quite, how did I lose that? I haven't had a desire to do that now for a couple months. How did that happen? So the majority of our anarthas, the smaller ones, go away like that. And it's only certain anarthas, Bhaktivinoda explains that it's the desire for passion, ignorance, as represented by Danikasura and Pralambasura, that's killed by Balaram rather than Krishna, Balaram representing the guru principle. And those have to be destroyed by ourselves. He says this is the great mystery of Raj Bhakti. All right, so in addition to just following the practices of bhakti, which naturally, someone needs to mute. In addition to following the regular practices of bhakti, is there anything that we need to do intentionally to get rid of anarthas? All right, so let's just look briefly and then we can have some time for question. So the first one, I'm sure everybody knows, and that is attentive chanting of the holy name. Now, how does this work? This works because if you read the Madhurya Kadambini, there's a list there of all the different anarthas. There's anarthas caused by past sinful activities. There's anarthas caused by past pious activities. And there's anarthas caused by offenses to the deity, offenses to the holy name. And then there's anarthas of the side effects of bhakti, and that is people giving you respect where you think, yes, I'm a very great person. So the anarthas from our past sins are evident in lust, anger, greed, illusion, pride, envy, distress, illusion, again, hunger, thirst, suffering, old age, being afraid of death, a lack of taste for chanting. Those are all effects of anarthas from previous sins. The effects of anarthas from previous piety is an attachment to righteous enjoyment, an attachment to heavenly enjoyment. That particularly shows up. Now, all of those, and then, so the anarthas from past sins, the anarthas from past piety, the anarthas from offenses to the deities, to the holy name, to the holy places, and the side effects of bhakti, the attachment to the perks of bhakti, all of that can be destroyed by chanting. All of the offenses on chanting can be destroyed by chanting. But you have to chant attentively. And if you chant attentively, they will all be destroyed. Or you could say all the offenses and all the anarthas except offenses on chanting are destroyed by chanting, and then all the offenses on chanting are destroyed by attentive chanting. And the reason that works is when we are attentive in our chanting, and this is true also with any kind of bhakti. If we're really attentive, but especially in the holy name, which is the core of bhakti, then Krishna is there. When Krishna is there, we see how wonderful Krishna is, and we see how ugly our anarthas are. We perceive how our anarthas are an obstacle to our relationship with Krishna, and so we naturally want to get rid of them. It's something like, you know, if you've had a garage or a closet that, or a drawer maybe, or part of your refrigerator, where you're just kind of throwing in things without looking. And then one day you decide to clean it out, and you go in this place and you're taking up stuff and you hold it up and you're like, oh, this is all full of mold and it's disgusting. And so you want to get rid of it. So this Krishna is like turning on the light, Gyanadipena Bhashvata, and when he turns on the light in the heart, then we see these anarthas for what they are and we want to get rid of them. So that's attentive chanting. And attentive chanting means that we're really meditating on Krishna when we're chanting. Then the other main way we get rid of our anarthas is Vaishnava Seva and Jiva Daya. So serving Vaishnavas and kindness or compassion to all living entities, So the Skanda Purana lists 6 improper dealings with devotees that obstruct our chanting. So to kill a devotee, to blaspheme a devotee, to envy a devotee, to get angry at a devotee, to fail to offer respects or obeisances to a devotee, or to not feel joy about seeing a devotee. And our Vaishnavacharyas say that our joy should extend to practitioners of other genuine spiritual processes. So feel joy when you see, you know, a Buddhist monk or a Catholic nun, like that. This joy should extend to devotees who've said or done something to cause us grief, to devotees who've struggled with Maya, with various varieties of material enticements. Now, some of these ways of blaspheming devotees involve our bodies, some involve our words, and some our attitude and thoughts. I thought we'd look at something written by Thomas à Kempis, who was a 13th century monk. He wrote this book, Imitation of Christ. He said, try to bear patiently with the defects and infirmities of others, whatever they may be, because you also have many a fault which others must endure. If you cannot make yourself what you wish to be, how can you bend others to your will? We want others to be perfect, but we do not correct our own faults. We wish them to be severely corrected, yet we will not correct ourselves. Their great liberty displeases us, yet we would not be denied what we ask. We would have them bound by laws, yet we will allow ourselves to be restrained in nothing. Hence, it is clear how seldom we think of others as we do of ourselves. Sridhar Swami, the great Bhagavatam commentator, wrote something that scares me. He says, whether the words are true or not, pointing out the faults of a Vaishnava constitutes blasphemy. So just to go around, look at this person's problem, this person's problem, this person's problem. And if we think about how many times the Shastra tells us to be a friend to all living entities. In Bhagavad Gita 6:32, Krishna says, a devotee of the Lord always, and this is in the purport, devotee of the Lord always looks to the welfare of all living entities, and in this way he is factually the friend of everyone. And then Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 12:13-14, one who is not envious but is a kind friend to all living entities is very dear to me. And Prabhupada in the purport says a devotee is always kind to everyone, even his enemy. Then a very interesting statement in the purport to Bhagavatam 3:27-4, where Krishna writes, the only real friend is Krishna. One should try to raise the consciousness of the conditioned soul to the platform of understanding that Krishna is his actual friend. If one makes friendship with Krishna, one will never be cheated, and he will get all help needed. Arousing this consciousness of the conditioned soul is the greatest service, not posing oneself as a great friend of another living entity. The power of friendship is limited. Although one claims to be a friend, he cannot be a friend unlimitedly. There are an unlimited number of living entities, and our resources are limited. Therefore, we cannot be of any real benefit to the people in general. The best service to the people in general is to awaken them to Krishna consciousness, so that they may know that the supreme enjoyer, the supreme proprietor, and the supreme friend is Krishna. Then this illusory dream of lording it over material nature will vanish. So I thought it was important to include this quote because when we're talking about being a friend to all living entities, we're not talking about trying to usurp the position of Krishna. Krishna says, Suridam Sarvabhutanam. So that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about pointing out that Krishna is the real friend, taking the role of introducing people to Krishna, bringing them back to Krishna. And then we have to actively get rid of our material attachments. Now, we already said that a lot of our material attachments disappear almost automatically just by being around Krishna. They lose their allurement for us. However, we know that there's an offense on chanting called to maintain material attachments while chanting. So obviously it is possible to do that. Now, going back to our original allegory or analogy of restoring a relationship with another human on this planet, I think we've all experienced someone who, they want to restore the relationship, but they don't want to let go of the problems that caused the breach in the relationship. It can be very frustrating to deal with this kind of situation. I know I dealt with it on both ends. So I dealt with it where people say, I'm sorry, I understand what I did wrong, I won't do it again. And practically as they're saying that, they're still doing the thing wrong. So it's like, well, why do you want to restore the relationship? So this is a situation of people who want to get rid of anarthas, again, for their own pleasure. And often they don't really want to get rid of the anarthas, they want to get rid of the effects of the anarthas. So they don't want to get rid of their material attachments or their false ego. They just want to get rid of the suffering that comes from that. Like someone who wants to eat unlimitedly and not get fat or not get a stomachache. So it is very possible to have that mood that I want to chant Hare Krishna, I want to engage in the process of bhakti, but I want to hold on to these blocks. So we can also look at the 6 aspects of surrender, which we're not going to go through in depth. We have another seminar on that. But accepting things favorable for our service to Krishna. This means like accepting chanting 16 rounds, offering our food, waking up early, reading the Bhagavatam. And if there are situations that we can't change, then we look at them favorably. We look at, anything out of our control, we see in a favorable way. The second thing is to reject anything that is not favorable for our Krishna consciousness. So this is especially giving up meat eating, intoxication, illicit sex, gambling, anything that's going to be an impediment to our Krishna consciousness, we will let go. Then being humble, not wanting people to praise us, not wanting people to honor us, not, as Prabhupada says, wanting the satisfaction of being honored by others. This is a willingness to admit our brokenness. And thinking only Krishna will protect me. I'm not going to be protected by the GBC. I'm not going to be protected by my husband, by my parents, by my children, by my bank account, by my college degrees, whatever. I'm going to only be protected by Krishna. And to see that only Krishna is maintaining me. I'm not maintaining myself by, again, it's not that ISKCON is maintaining me or my husband or my degree or my occupation, but Krishna is maintaining me. And to have no interest other than Krishna's interest. Not to have, well, there's Krishna's interest and there's my interest. My interest is Krishna's interest. And then I see, in addition to this, to having this mood, so we've talked about chanting with attention. We talked about being kind to the devotees and being merciful, the real friend of all living entities. We talked about being surrendered. And the last thing I want to look at in terms of getting rid of anarthas, and there's a lot more we could talk about, I'm not looking at everything tonight. The last thing I want to look at is getting in the mood of the acharyas. So one of the ways that we can take on the mood of the acharyas is by saying the prayers or singing the songs of the acharyas, especially with understanding and with heart. And there are certain prayers of the acharyas, especially crying out for Krishna to remove our difficulties, for Krishna to help us, for Krishna to remove the blocks between me and him, and for Krishna to reveal to me what my anarthas are so that I will let go of them. I was thinking, and sometimes we're asking, of course, the great devotees to do this. I was thinking about Ohe Vaishnava Thakura by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Some other ones here. I was thinking of Kabe Habibullah Sayyidi Namar is another very nice one, asking to get free of anarthas. And what else do I have? Anything where we're meditating on Krishna and really trying to increase our relationship with Krishna. So we have just about 13 more minutes here. So I thought I would end and we'd have some time for questions.
Thank you so much, Mother. I have full of little post-it pads of notes all over my laptop. Thank you. This is beautiful, beautiful class. Gave us some really nice practical pointers to really meditate on. I would like to invite devotees, if you have any questions, if you can unmute yourself, ask your question and mute back. That way there's no background interference.
Okay, I see Jeremy raised hand, so maybe you want to ask question?
You can also write questions in the chat box. That's very effective.
Yes.
So I actually logged in somewhat late. I apologize for that. And I'm a bit of a neophyte comparative to some of you. Can you tell me what an anartha is?
Oh, sure. The word artha means something you want, something that's good, nutritious food. And anartha is something that's not good, like junk food. And an anartha generally looks like an artha. It usually comes disguised, like junk food looks like it's food. You know, it doesn't look like it's junk. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Material contamination.
Yes, material contamination. Something that blocks our relationship with the Lord, something that blocks our relationship with the divine. But it's something that's unwanted. You could think of it like, you know, old clothes in your closet that you haven't worn for 5 years that are stinking and taking up room. So you can't get the things that you want to have. You know, something that you have some attachment to, you have some idea that it's good, but actually it's not good, and it's a block in some way. It's acting as an impediment in some way for what you do want. Is that okay?
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, next we have Gopal Govind Das Prabhu from New Jersey.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Jai Shri Prabhupada. Beautiful class, very nicely cited the points, wonderful points. I have one silly type of question. Am I audible first?
What?
Yes,
Am I
Prabhu,
audible?
yes,
Yes,
we can hear you.
Yes, you're
Okay.
very audible.
Thank you. Well, my first question is, or really the question is that we are aware that we do all the anarthas which led us to this material world, and we have this conditioned soul. Getting rid of these anarthas is so difficult. Please give us some tips of knowing that if we are continuing to do some anarthas in a practical manner, so we can avoid it.
I thought that's what I did for the last hour.
Okay, should I reiterate? Okay, so for, the point here, the anarthas, we are doing the anarthas, some or the other, but there are anarthas which are probably going to hamper us in our progress. So how do we understand that if we have done any anartha recently?
You understand by the effect. It's like, how do you know you ate something that's not good for you? You feel tired, your stomach hurts, maybe you get, some diarrhea, or, there's some effect. So the effect of the anarthas, the main effect of an anartha is a block between us and Krishna, a block between us and the divine. We may not enjoy chanting, or we may not enjoy reading, or we don't feel joyful in our life. We don't feel peaceful. We don't feel grateful. We're not in our natural position. And then we're affected by the material body. We're affected by hunger or thirst. That doesn't mean if you have no anarthas, you're not going to eat. It just means that things like that are going to disturb you. So if we had no anarthas, we would not be disturbed by disease and old age and hunger and thirst and tiredness. Again, that doesn't mean we wouldn't sleep. It just means that they wouldn't be a disturbance to us. We wouldn't be overcome by anger or lust or greed. If we had no anarthas at all, we'd be functioning in our full spiritual position. So those are the symptoms that we have anarthas, that we're holding on to something. Just a simple analogy, it's like we're eating something that's not healthy, you could say, or we have some sort of unhealthy habit in our life that's preventing our real spiritual nature from exhibiting itself.
Thank you so much, Mataji. The situation like Rupa Goswami unknowingly offended a Vaishnava, a Pangu Vaishnava, the disabled one. So similar to that, we're living in the devotee community, and sometimes some devotees are sensitive and they get offended. We might not know it.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. That our general excuse for offending people is that they're sensitive. Okay? If you've been offended by somebody, I'm assuming that sometime in your life, somebody has said or done something that was painful for you. I'm assuming that that's happened to you at some point in your life. That some other human being has done something, said something, or failed to do something, or failed to say something, and you felt some kind of negative emotion from that. That person was a direct causative factor in some negative consequence for you. Now, how would you feel if that person said, "Man, I'm sorry you're so sensitive"? It doubled their offense. So when we offend others, whether we know we knew we offended them, first of all, most of us, most of the time, do not try to offend other people. I very, very rarely. That's very rare that we intentionally, we do it sometimes. And sometimes we actually do intend to hurt other people. We may be arguing with somebody and we're so hurt by them and we're so upset with them that we intentionally say something we know is going to hurt them. So we human beings do that sometimes, but that's not our general mood of most people, materialists, spiritualists, whatever. Most of the time, we're trying to meet our own needs and we're trying to go about our own lives. And we either know we hurt other people, but that wasn't our intention. They were kind of collateral damage. We were trying to accomplish something. And in the course of accomplishing that something, somebody was inconvenienced or hurt or sad or insulted. And we were aware, maybe we were even aware in the beginning that would happen before we did the thing. Or once we did the thing, we were aware that happened, but we felt that, well, what can we do? We have to accomplish X, Y, Z, and this person just got hurt. without our wanting to do it. Like I'm driving my car and bugs are on the windshield getting smashed, and I'm not going out thinking I want to kill bugs on the highway. I'm thinking I want to drive somewhere and the bug's dying, or I know I'm killing the bugs. It's not that I'm not aware that I'm killing the bugs, but I'm not going to kill the bugs. And then there's many other times we offend people. We have no awareness at all. We're so absorbed in our own life, and we're so absorbed in our own needs that we haven't a clue that someone else is being offended. So most of the times we offend other people is in those two categories where I know I'm offending people, but I want to accomplish something and I don't know how to accomplish it without offending them. I don't really want to offend them, but I don't know how to avoid it. And the other thing is where I have not a clue that I'm offending them. And then there are the occasional times when I actively want to hurt people, when I actively want to offend them, I want them to suffer. Maybe they did something to me, I want to get back at them. That's usually the reason. I want to teach them a lesson or something like that. There are those instances where I intentionally want to take pleasure in someone else's suffering, and that is the epitome of evil. When I want to take pleasure in someone else's suffering, especially if I want to be the agent of that suffering. So, when I'm like, yes, you're suffering, that's evil. And if I'm like, yes, you're suffering and I caused it, that is really the definition of evil. So again, most of us are not functioning on that platform. So how can we deal with this? Well, one way we can deal with this is to assume that if I'm very self-centered, and even if I'm not very self-centered, I am going to hurt others without intending it. And in the Vedas, there are regular kinds of purificatory rites that one does for the unknowing, unintentional harm that we do to other living beings. And it's probably a good idea to have our antenna out a little bit, so to speak, and try to notice when other people might be disturbed by our behavior, even if we didn't intend it. One way we can increase the likelihood of that is by being very humble when people point out how we did hurt them. And that's a very hard thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do. It takes quite a lot of practice. And it takes quite a lot of faith also. And by the way, this doesn't work with some people. There are some really mean people where you can never admit you've done anything wrong, or they will hold that against you for the rest of your life. So there are some people like that, just as a caveat. They're not most people, but some percentage. But with most people, if you set up a standard that they know, that they can say to you, hey, Gopal, the way you said that really, really hurt my feelings. I felt like you were insulting me. And if you go, oh man, I really apologize. I really apologize. I had no intention of hurting you, and I didn't want to hurt you. And, I'll be a lot more careful next time how I talk to you. You just take full responsibility. Now, as far as the collateral damage, my own personal belief is that most of the time we can accomplish what we want to accomplish without hurting other people. And, our hurting other people as the so-called inevitable result of our behavior is usually an excuse. And as for the intentional hurting of other people, that would be a whole other seminar. Because that's really deep, heavy stuff that we're not going to be able, because it's now 6:20 and our time is up. But some regular purificatory thing, we can pray to the Lord, my dear Lord, please have it that all the living entities that I have harmed without knowing it will have the soft-hearted enough to forgive me, and let me be forgiving towards everyone who's offended me. And that is one way. And then to really try to think of ways that we can accomplish things without hurting people as collateral damage. And as far as the active desire to hurt people, that is something we really have to look into our heart and get out there. And Arta, I just see someone ask a question about patience in relation to the gradual cleansing process. A lot of that has to do with humility. A lot of that has to do with humility. If somebody's 300 pounds overweight, they're not going to lose that 300 pounds in one night. It's not going to happen. And the person has to realize, I ate all this extra food. You know, I'm the one who had the 3rd helpings of cake. I'm the one who had the 10 gulab jamins. You know, I'm the one who didn't exercise. And I did that over a period of months or maybe even years. And I have to be patient that when I'm, you know, going on the diet, doing the exercise, that, you know, there's going to be some difficulty. I'm going to feel hungry. I'm going to feel deprived sometimes. And it's going to take some time to get back to my normal weight. So it's a matter of humility, you know, or if I haven't exercised for months and, you know, I'm starting an exercise program, and there's going to be patience to build up to that exercise program. And also, if I've really damaged a relationship, you know, I can't just come in and, hey, I'm back. Hi. You know, I'm sorry. All right. Done and dusted. I've given my apology. Now let's have the relationship back. You know, if I've really messed up the relationship over time, it may take some time before I'm trusted again. So that's all a matter of humility. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much, Mother. If I can just interject, I think Mother Mahalakshmi had a question. Can you take one more? Did you have a question, Mother? I saw you raising your hand. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I apologize. I thought I saw raising your hand. Thank you, Mother Urmila. It's been a blessing to have and hear you. At least for me, it's hearing after, I think my daughter's 22. After 22 years.
Oh my. Oh my.
So I'm very fortunate and blessed to hear you again after such a long time. And we hope that whenever you're in this area and whenever we're out of this COVID-19 situation, that you would visit us at ISKCON Harrisburg so that we get your personal physical darshan and your blessings and mercy. And we want to thank all the devotees for joining us from New Jersey, from North Carolina, and everywhere else in Pennsylvania. We normally end our program with chanting the Nrsimha Arti. And I will ask Vishaka if she can lead us in the Nrsimha Arti. And again, before we go, thank you, Mother, and thank you to all the devotees. And Mother Urmila, we are so fortunate to hear from you. Thank you so much. Vishaka, go ahead.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste
Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Prahlada Ladadai.
Prahlada Ladadai.
Hiranyakashipurvakshaha.
Hiranyakashipurvakshaha.
Shilatankanakalaye.
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 Ito Narsimha Parato Narsimha.
Ito Narsimha Parato Narsimha.
Yato yato yami tato Narsimha.
Yato yato yami tato Narsimha.
Bahir Narsimha Hirdaye Narsimha.
Bahir Narsimha Hirdaye Narsimha.
Bahir Narsimha Hirdaye Narsimha.
Bahir Narsimha Hirdaye Narsimha.
Narasimha Madim Sharanam Prapade.
Narasimhadim Sharanam Prapadhe.
Tava kara kamalavare nakha adbhuta shringha dalita hiranyakashipu tanubringa keshavadrita narahari rupa jai jagadisha hare jai jagadisha hare jai jagadisha hare
Tava kara kalavare nakha adbhuta shringa
Dalita
Hiranyakashipu Tanuvringa Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa
Jaya
Jaya
Jagat
Jagadisha Hare
Jaya
Jaya Jagadisha Hare
Jaya
Jaya Jagadisha Hare.
Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare
Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare.
Jaya Narsimhadev, Jaya Narsimhadev, Narsimhadev, Jaya Narsimhadev.
Jaya
Jaya
Narsimhadev, Jaya Narsimhadev, Jaya Narsimhadev, Jaya Narsimhadev.
Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj.
Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Guru Srila Prabhupada.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Nrsingadev Bhagavan ki jai.
Jai.
Prahlad Maharaj ki jai.
Jai.
Nitai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you so much, devotees, for joining us this evening. And thank you to our new guests who have joined us from Kansas. Thank you, Jeremy. Marla from from West Virginia. Thank you for joining us. I see Krishna Priya online. Thank you for joining us. And it's so nice to see more new devotees joining our classes. And if you'd like to follow us on Facebook, please do follow us on Facebook on ISKCON Harrisburg, and you will see us on our Facebook page. And there'll be upcoming speakers. We are very fortunate to have Giriraj Swami that will be speaking this Friday evening at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will definitely post that on our Facebook. So please do follow us on Facebook, and if you would like to be added to the email address so that we can send you alerts, please do also post your email address privately on our Facebook page, and we will add you to our email alerts also. And next Sunday, we have a wonderful class by His Grace, Anuttama Prabhu, who's our GBC. So we have 2 wonderful classes coming up. So we hope to see all of you. Until then, have a good weekend. It's a holiday weekend, so please stay safe and stay home. And we hope to see all of you again next weekend. And you guys have a wonderful evening and a wonderful weekend. Hari Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.